Hello, everybody from Alexandria, Virginia. Happy to have on my good friend. He is a a paramedic for the city of Chicago Fire Department. He also is a White Sox super fan. I got to know this guy working for the White Sox in 2016. My good friend Barry Bagodonuts. Barry, always great to see your face. Sorry, I haven't been to Chicago lately to see you, but always great, catching up via text and phone calls and FaceTimes, all that. Good to see you, and glad to have you on.
Good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are things at the ballpark going? I miss being at Comiskey. I still call it Comiskey. I
Everybody
miss
does.
I miss being at Comiskey, calling it my place of employment. But you know, good things for me here. But think about my time with the White Sox every day, and it's because of people like you. So how are things there?
Good. The results on the field aren't what we hoped for, as everybody pretty much knows, but it's still a lot of fun to be at the ballpark every day.
Absolutely. And how we met, Barry, so you're wearing that White Sox firefighter
Mhm.
helmet. So I did 50-50 for the White Sox, and I'd always go to they always put me up in the 500 level, I guess because I was a rookie, whatever. And I would always see you sitting there with that firefighter helmet with your scorecard and all that. I'm like, this guy
Yeah.
is fucking cool. I was like, I don't know what it was. And like, you would never buy a 50-50 raffle ticket my first year. I'm going somewhere with this, not to offend you, but you never. But I was like, I don't know. There's something about this guy where I was like, I think him and I are going to be friends because I always saw you at the ballpark. And then one day I just came up and started talking to you, and then talking to you again and again, and then it turned into going to Wings and Rings and
Yep.
many nights there. And all of a sudden you're like, dude, how come you never ask me to buy a raffle ticket? And I was like, well, I don't want like our friendship to be based on like you have to buy this. You're like, dude, that's your job. You're like, I'll buy from you every day, and you start buying car raffle tickets all
Yes.
the time.
And yet I never won a car.
Well, I mean, it's coming, If not, you'll get a card, you'll put White Sox decals on it. I foresee it, right?
I can't roll that out.
Yeah. Can you kind of talk to me, Barry, about how'd the name Bagodonuts start?
It's a really stupid story, and it'll take like 30 seconds. So I went to my friend Lauren was a bartender, and she calls me up one day and say, "Hey, come to the bar." So I go sit at her bar having a couple drinks, and out of nowhere, she just blurts out, "You got to change your Facebook name." I asked her why, and she goes, "I don't know." I said, "Okay, to what?" And she goes, and she just blurts out, "Bag of donuts." I said, "Where'd that come from?" I said, "I'd never heard that before." And she goes, "I don't know." And it just stuck. And that's really the whole story.
And now you've got all the jerseys. Hell, you gave
Yeah.
me a signed jersey. It's
Hmm.
here. That says Bagodonuts 27. You
Yeah.
signed it. Of course, we may have had an adult beverage or two, and you're like, I want to sign this jersey for you. I still got it.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. Can you kind of talk about I love diving into stories about like how
Mhm.
people became fans, and you and I used to talk all the time of just about White Sox from the '90s and just how you became a Sox fan. But let my listeners know like how did your love for the White Sox start?
Probably when I was about 5 years old, my dad started taking me to ball games. I always had fun when we would go, and then just been going to games ever since. And every chance I get, when I was a kid, we'd do about 3, 4 games a year. And then when I actually moved to Bridgeport, when I bought my season tickets, and now I'm looking at about 65 to 70 games a year. Because I have to miss a couple because of work sometimes, but otherwise, season tickets, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, and you've been in the same seat since that ballpark or since you got season tickets, correct?
Yes, yes, section 530, row 2.
Section 530 row 2, and you go there, you'll see Karen and George. They're still good health, everything.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing really good.
Good. Yeah, they were some of my favorites too. Always loved coming to 530, and even on a there were so I was paid the same regardless. So like if there were ball games where it was very slow, which there were a lot, especially in
Yeah,
2017, I always somehow found my way to 530 row 2, and maybe would take in an inning or so.
of course, man.
Great people, great people.
Mhm.
What about Comiskey? What makes it so special there?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. Just we're all family there. It's fun to watch ball games. Obviously, being my home park, it's going to be my favorite ballpark. But it's just everybody's family there. We all get along. We have a good time. There's lots to see and do. We got all the player statues on the outfield concourse. And I believe they're going to be unveiling a new one this year. I forgot who it was, to be honest with you.
Nice. And talk to me too about Wings and Rings. So obviously, been there many times. You and I may have closed it down a time or two. I remember one night in particular, just reminiscing. Do you remember the night? So it was like a 7:05 game. And usually for like Sundays, we're usually like what, 11:30 or 1:05 games, something like that. I think it was like an 11:30 game. So I had to be at the ballpark at like 9:30, 9:15, and we closed Wings down, and I think it closes at like 2 a.m. I ended up taking the bus back to where I lived in Gold Coast there,
Mhm.
and ended up the bus driver like slammed on the gas or whatever. I went flying into the bus seat. So I had a black eye. So I show up at the ballpark the next day and you're like, dude, did you get a fight on the way home? I was like, yeah, with the bus seat, and you were like, I was like, how was your night last night? And you were sitting there doing your scorecard. And like I said, we closed it down. I'll leave it at that. But you're like, shut up and watch the ball game. I don't know
That
if you
sounds
remember
about right. Yeah, when I get into the scorecards and stuff, man, it's like, don't bother me. I need to keep track of this.
Yeah, but we had fun the night before,
Oh,
but
of
no,
course, we
great
always had
times.
fun there.
Yeah. How'd you find Wings and all that, and what makes that place special too for you?
Just when I moved to the neighborhood looking for a place to go have a beer. And I tried out a couple different places. The first bar I went to was actually Cork and Kerry because it was the only
Okay.
one I knew of in the neighborhood. And then somebody brought me over to Wings one day and just started going there. And they're all like the ballpark. They're all family over there.
For sure. Talk to me a little bit, Barry. So earlier, okay, so let me backtrack. You brought up your favorite ballpark.
Hmm.
I know the answer to this, but what is your least favorite ballpark outside of Wrigley Field? I know Wrigley's not your favorite or your least favorite.
Not
I
even
know that.
close.
Yeah. But what's your I guess second least favorite? And I'm gonna guess either Tampa or Oakland.
Oakland. I see.
Oakland.
I actually like Tampa. I really enjoyed that ballpark. But Oakland, there was just nothing special about it. I mean, there were times when you would have more cats in the ballpark than people. And I'm not even making that up. That's the honest truth. Because they had a bunch of homeless cats living in the ballpark at times. And it was actually a news story, at least it was here, about just what rotten condition it's in. There's really nothing at that ballpark that makes it stand out. And it's not one that people think, oh my gosh, I have to get to this ballpark.
Yeah.
It's just pretty boring, to be honest with you.
Well, I remember when I was working in Tampa Bay and I was outside selling the raffle tickets. And I remember I knew you were coming to the game because we had planned,
Hmm. Oh,
we
yeah.
planned that. But you go and I was like, you saw me and you're like, hey, they let someone stupid like you work here, whatever. And everybody turned around looking at you. They didn't know you and I were friends. And then we came over and, gave each other a handshake. But everybody in line was just staring. And that was the first time I'd seen you in like 3 years, and
It
just
was crazy. Yeah, it'd been a while.
yeah. And you visited every ballpark. Can you talk about those
Yes.
travels?
Well, it started back in like 2015, actually. I had a week off of work, and the Sox were playing in Milwaukee. So I thought
Mhm.
it might be fun to go see a ball game outside of Chicago. So I went to Milwaukee for a few days. And after that, it's like, man, that was a lot of fun. So my work schedule, I get one day on and then 3 days off. So I thought about doing like quick trips on those 3 days off. And so you would think I'd start somewhere fairly close to home, like Detroit, maybe Cleveland or something. No, I got off work and flew to Seattle that day. I spent 2 nights in Seattle, came home, and I was back at work on time. But
Wow.
it's been a lot of fun, just going around, and not just to the ball games themselves, but like seeing everything that the country has to offer. Like went to the Space Needle in Seattle. I've seen the Liberty Bell, the U.S. Mint, the Statue of Liberty. There's so much to
Mhm.
see out there.
And I remember you coming to New York when I lived in Jersey. You and I
Hmm.
went to the Mets game, and obviously they were playing the Sox, and my buddy Jake Berger was playing for them at the time. So I got to see you, got to see Jake play,
Hmm.
which was great. Got to meet your cousin
Yeah.
Jake. Ironically, his name's Jake too, and he lived near me in Carteret. And I think that's the one thing about baseball is it brings a lot of people together. I wouldn't have, had I not worked for the Sox and went out
Hmm.
of my way to like come talk to you, whatever, I would have never known who you were. And
Oh, of
you're
course.
my best friends. And it's like, I just feel like there's so many stories like that. Maybe you could tell my listeners, like, are there times you've gone to the ballpark, met someone, and then like, they become a close friend, or you've stayed in touch with them during these travels? Because I just feel like baseball's funny like that.
Yeah, like all the guys that I sit with in 530. We call ourselves the 530 crew now. I mean, we go to like holiday parties with each other. We go to funerals and birthdays and whatnot. And we try to get together at least once during the off season. Yeah, those guys definitely. And then, like some of the stadium employees I've met, just other fans. You meet a lot of people at the ballpark, actually.
Yeah, you do, and it's just crazy, and all the teams I've worked for personally. I got my start with the White Sox. That's why
Mhm.
obviously I have an allegiance to a North Side team in Chicago and a National League team in New York, but I've always had a passion for the White Sox. Even before I worked for them, there was just something about them, and even more special was the first team I worked for, and they really. I was telling Jerry Reinsdorf when I had dinner with them. I said, of all the teams I've worked for, I just felt like the White Sox were a family. There was just something about that team, the atmosphere, whether they're winning,
Mhm.
losing. I always felt like I was coming to see my family.
Of
And
course.
as a fan, do you feel that same vibe?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's no question about it. We're all family there. Especially like I said, the people that I sit around. We're all texting each other every day. Who's going to the game today? Who's whatever. But yeah, we're definitely family. And then even like the stadium employees. There was one girl who works at the concession stand upstairs, and her mother was convinced somehow that I was an actor on Chicago Fire. And even after I explained I am clearly not, her mother wouldn't believe it.
Nice. So you've been to a lot of games.
Hmm.
What are some of your favorite memories going to Comiskey?
Probably my first playoff game with my dad. That one stands out. Obviously, we don't make it to a whole lot of playoff games, but in 2021 was the first time I actually ever made it to a playoff game. It was the last time they had made the playoffs. Before that was 2008, and that was before I was able to afford season tickets. But yeah, going to the playoff game with my dad is the one that probably stands out the most. And then you want like other things we've done, like we've been on the field to play catch. The Sox will do like season ticket holder events like that. So I got to go on the field and play catch with my dad, and that's a memory that's going to last a lifetime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what in terms of were you there? I was working that day and it was sold out, even though I think the White Sox were out of contention or about to be out of contention, but Burley Day. You were at that game, weren't
Oh
you? When
yeah,
they
I absolutely
Wow,
was
what
there.
an atmosphere. I sold a lot of tickets that day.
Oh, I bet you did. And I
It
can only
was
imagine what the jackpot had to be.
I think it was well, I was doing car raffle at that time.
Mhm.
But I would say the pot was probably about 85,000, I'd say, because I know we started it at what was Mark Burley's number?
56.
56. We started it at 56,000 because
Okay.
the White Sox guaranteed, even if we didn't make
Hmm.
56,000, they guaranteed like
Right,
we'll
right.
pay this. So everything was 56, and I remember them bringing out the what was it, the UTV for Mark, and then a
Hmm.
car for Mark, and all that. And I mean, just every seat. There was not an empty seat in that place, and I was like, oh
No.
my gosh, could you
Well,
imagine this place during the playoffs?
the thing is, though, Mark Burley doesn't make a whole lot of public appearances now that
No.
he's retired from baseball. They tried to get him over to Wings one day to do a signing, and from
Mhm.
what I hear, they offered him like $250,000, and plus he's a
Really?
big hunter, so they offered him some hunting gear, and he turned it all down. I just don't want to do it. So
Wow.
when they have an event like that, then yeah, he's going to draw quite a crowd. At Sox Fest this past year, he actually bought a beer for everybody in attendance
Wow.
because they were trying to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the World Series team. So he did make an appearance and he bought a beer for every single fan there. Like they handed out vouchers and you just bring it to the concession stand and get a free beer.
Wow. Yeah, he sounds like a class act. Another guy too, you brought up the World Series. What was that like for you as a fan when they won the World Series?
Oh, I thought I was going to cry. You know, just watching that game four in Houston. Bobby Jenks throws that final pitch.
Yeah.
I ran out my front door and I'm screaming, yelling, running in the streets, and the neighbors are all probably thinking, "Will you shut up?"
Hey, you remember in 16 when the Cubs won, right? Could you
Hmm.
imagine? I was living downtown in Gold Coast, and of course I was working for the team, which made it special. But people
Right.
people know I grew up a Cubs fan, so it made it
Hmm.
even more special. And I remember you and I going to Wings during the whole playoff run, and I was a nervous freaking wreck. Like, and you were like, just enjoy this, Tyler. Like, enjoy, because if they do win, you'll. And one of the first texts I got after they won was from you. Even though you're a Sox fan, I really just appreciate it, because I know you wanted me to experience what you probably experienced as a White Sox fan, and I took it all in. I'll tell you that.
Well, especially when you don't have a lot of success like other teams do, like the
Yeah.
Yankees or the Dodgers recently. When we do get that chance to finally experience that, it's just such an incredible feeling.
Did you go to the parade in '05 or?
No, I had to work. I wasn't able to make it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've watched videos of it, and it Chicago was just. I remember when they won. Of course, I was living in Missouri at the time, but I was
Right.
just like, how special for the city. And I do want to ask too, another person who I always thought fondly of. I don't know him. I don't think I've even met him. I'm sure we walked by the ballpark. At the ballpark a few times, was Hawk Harrelson. What are your some of your memories of Hawk?
I'm a big fan of his. I know a lot of people don't care for him. They don't care for his style of announcing, but I've been to a couple of those chalk talks that the Sox do for season ticket holders, and
Mhm.
twice I think was him. And I could sit there and listen to that guy talk all day long. I mean, I love his hawkisms, if you will. Just the things he says, the stories he tells. Just being like a hardcore baseball fan, it's something that I could just sit and listen to all day long. And I wish he was still announcing, but he's got to retire sometime.
Yeah, for sure. And another person that you and I one day ran into, we were sitting at our favorite establishment over off of what's where I forget that street name.
Halstead,
Halstead,
34th and
34th
Halstead.
Halstead.
Hmm.
That's right. Okay, we're sitting at our favorite establishment there, and in walks Gene Honda.
Oh yeah.
And uh, anyway, so I worked with someone at Loyola who I don't know if he still does, Pat Schultz. I'll have to text him and ask, but he's the White Sox backup PA announcer. So
Oh yeah.
whenever Gene's
Yeah. I know.
not
I know what you're
there,
talking about.
yeah, I worked with him at Loyola, and Gene knew who I was because Pat had told him, like, I work with
Hmm.
this guy, I work for the Sox, whatever. So Gene walks in, and I said, I'm Tyler Onstad. I work with Pat Schultz at Loyola. And you're like, he goes, I've heard about you. And he goes, nice to meet you, shaking my hand, whatever. And you're like, dude, you know Gene Honda? I said, I guess I do now, and just picture with
He's
us, down to earth guy. And I love
he
listening
is
to him
such a funny guy
now.
too.
I know.
My God, that guy has jokes. I mean, you sit there, you talk to him, and he's another one I could listen to him all day long.
Yeah.
He's just so he's so likable, so easy to get along with.
Yeah, the other thing now, the one thing he won't do is he will not announce like do his PA announcer and announce your name.
That's
But I
right.
did, I did get him one day. So I obviously I've got the poster back there, but one of my best friends is Theo Fleury, who played for the Blackhawks, and I said,
Hmm.
"Hey, Gene, and I know you don't do personal names, but I said you did this. You used to do this or he does it for the Hawks, but I said you did
Right.
this, or you announced this name back when he played for Chicago. So would you mind doing one more impersonation for me?" And he actually did. He went,
Oh, that's
Black
cool.
scored by number 14, Theo Fleury. His first of the season at
Hmm.
8:39, whatever. And that was just kind of cool. But he won't do your personal name,
No, because I saw him after a Blackhawks game one day in the parking lot of whatever bar we went to afterwards over there on Madison, and uh, we're walking out, and he's there. Took a picture with him and everything. He said, "Hey, Gene, can I ask you one favor?" He goes, "No, I'm not going to announce your name."
Hey, so
It's like, okay, never mind.
speaking of that too, this has nothing to do with the White Sox, but it is kind of funny since we're on, since we are kind of
Hmm.
bringing up the Blackhawks, which, I'm not a fan of the Blackhawks, but,
Neither am I.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got my Chicago Wolves pennant flag in my kitchen. I'll show it to you sometime, but,
Okay.
um, anyway, so tell me the story about, it was one of the Hull brothers. Can you tell that story with you were at an
Um,
autograph?
Bobby Hall. Yeah, he was doing an appearance at a fundraiser for Bucks for Burn Camp, and he stopped in the bar, signed a few things, then he left, went to the bar next door, got completely hammered, and came back into this bar. So we're all standing in line. I get up there to go get his autograph on a hockey puck, and he looks at it, looks at me, looks at his assistant or whoever, goes, "What am I supposed to write on here?" The guy goes, "How about your name for starters?" "Oh, yeah," and he's wagging his finger. "Good idea." So he signs it, and he goes, "Now what?" The guy goes, "How about you put on there 61 Cup champs?" "Oh, that's great." I said, "Bobby, I didn't know you were from Berwyn." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And he rattled off the exact address and then told me how he went to the house one day, just opened the door, walked in, and they're like, "Who the hell are you?"
And his handler that was there saying, "How about signing it for starters?" had been dealing with him all day, and that was like
Oh,
the day
yeah.
of the coffin,
I mean, he
right?
was completely sober when he first walked in, because a lot of times for events like that, they'll have him sign stuff that they can raffle off
Yeah,
before the fans go up there and get to meet him.
yeah.
And my buddy went up to him right after I did. He goes, "Hey, Bobby, how you doing?" And he just looks at him. He goes, "I know you." And he goes, "Okay, Bobby, how do you know me?" He goes, "Wait, what? No, I don't think I know you, but I know you."
Well, you should have. When I lived in St. Louis, and the Blues, I lived across the street from the Arch, and the Blues.
Hmm.
The Blues had their celebration down there on the Arch grounds, and I had a bunch of people on my balcony. We, don't turn me in, although the statute of limitations has probably passed. We had more people on that balcony than we should have, so we broke the fire code. But
Oops.
all of a sudden, I hear someone just, and I looked at my friends. I'm like, "Who the hell is this speaking?" We had it on the TV inside, but all of
Hmm.
us were outside, and on my balcony. Well, it turns out it was Brett Hull. So I was like, well, go figure. Of all the people in the Blues organization, could have just guessed it was Brett.
Of course.
What I don't want to put you on the spot with all these
No,
stories. Another story, Ozzie Guillen, you met him at an autograph show. Can you tell that story too about?
well, I mean, there was really nothing special about that one. He was just when Frank Thomas had his restaurant open, he was
Mhm.
doing a signing there. There was him, it was Ozzy, Aaron Rowan, Joe Creedy, and I
Yep.
forgot who the other one was. But they were all signing autographs, and he was just there. He's a real nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He heard great things about him. And who are the other story too? You told me you met Minnie Minosa one time in the parking
Yes.
lot, and didn't you? If I remember correctly, some guy in line was like, "That's not Minnie Minosa," and you were like,
Yeah.
"Yes."
So they were giving something away that day, and the only reason I know that is because you never wait in line to get into the ballpark unless they're giving something away.
Or they're
So
or
here
they're blowing,
comes.
as George says, or they're blowing shit up at the end of the night.
Yeah, that's about it.
Fireworks. We're talking about fireworks.
But Minnie comes into the parking lot. I remember that black Cadillac anywhere. I said to tell the guy behind me, I says, "Hey, that's Minnie Minoso." He goes, "No, it's not." And we're going back and forth. He goes, "If that's really him, go say hi to him." So I told him, "Well, I'm going to wait till he gets out of his car first. I'm not going to go knocking on his window." And I said, "If that's really him, you save my place in line." He goes, "If it's not, you go to the end of the line. Deal." So he took a couple minutes, and the guy's, "I'm telling you, that's not him." I said, "Just wait a minute." So he opens the door, gets out. I said, "All right, I'll be right back." So I go up there. I said, "Hey, Minnie, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh, hello, my friend." And that was the thing about Minnie. He didn't have fans; he had friends.
Yeah.
Everybody was his friend. So he just asked me how I'm doing and everything, and I asked him if I could take a quick picture with him. He goes, "Oh, well, I hope you have a camera because I don't." So we took a picture together, and he is my favorite ball player of all time. Definitely my favorite. I've met him at autograph signings a couple of times, and he's always just so gracious with his time. My dad and I went in there one day, and "Hello, sir, how are you? What do you do for a living?" And he's like, "Be careful, don't smudge, the ink on the autograph." And just all around nice guy. When he died, that broke my heart.
Yeah, yeah, it's like I said, I could rattle off names of people with the White Sox. Harold Baines is someone who
Oh
I
yeah.
look up to just because he I'd walk back when I'd be selling tickets. I go to the
Mhm.
I don't know what they call it now, but it's right behind home plate, the scout seats or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's still the scout seats.
It's still the scout seats,
Yeah.
okay. And I'd be walking through the tunnel where the players, the locker
Mhm.
room, all that is. Walk by it, and Harold would always walk by. He'd act like he knew. He'd always ask me how my day's going. He'd act like he knew who I was. That's the kind of upstanding people the White Sox have is people like Minnie
Oh,
and
for sure.
Harold. I guarantee you, if I went back to Comiskey and ran into Harold Baines, he would act like he knew who I was. That's just the kind of person he is.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple times. Like once in a while, my ticket rep, Zach Galloway. My God, what a great guy he is.
Yeah, yeah.
He calls me up and he goes, "Hey, there's going to be an autograph signing. Harold Baines is going to be there. You want to go? It's in a suite." And I'm like, "Yeah." So I go in there, and me and Jerry, one of the other guys from the 530
Yeah.
crew, we're in there, and we all get in line, and he's just there signing autographs, whatever you want, he'll sign it. And he's kind of a quiet guy, but
Yeah.
he's real mild mannered, and he's just so nice to everybody. I'm a big fan of Harold Baines.
Yeah, for sure. And a couple more questions here. I know we're about
Yep,
at time.
that's all
But
right.
there is another story too. So it
Oh
involves,
Lord,
yeah. We got
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
where
stuff.
you're going with this. Should I be afraid?
Not this one,
Is
no.
that okay?
So, as most of my listeners know, I was on the 2015 team at Missouri State, and we had a future. We knew he was going to be a heck of a player.
Mhm.
Um, First round, didn't know. I mean, we figured he was going to go in the first round, and then his senior year, he
Right,
ended up in the first round. And I was living in Chicago, and
11th overall.
yeah, they had him projected going. Um, what was it, 15th, 16th? Some had him
Mhm.
maybe at 9. And I woke up and I was like, that morning, I'll never forget. And I was heading to class and I said, I have a feeling Jake may go to the White Sox. Something just told me. And he grew up a Sox fan. That's what,
Right.
I remember walking down State Street. I wasn't following the draft, but I remember exactly where I was. I was there walking past the McDonald's on State. I was heading
Hmm.
to Jewel Osco. And all of a sudden, first text I get was from you, and it was
I
Jake just
remember
got
that.
the
No,
White
I
Sox.
no, I asked you. I said, "What's your buddy's name that you went to school with?" And
Yes,
that's when you
that's
said
what it
Jake
was.
Berger. I said
Jake
the
Burger,
Sox just picked him 11th overall.
11. Yep. And
Yeah.
then he was at the ballpark throwing out the first pitch like
Uh huh.
a week later. I had to be at class, but he texted me and he goes, "I was looking for you at the ballpark." I was like, "Yeah, I had class." But so there's a story you told me. You got a phone call one day. Can you talk
Yeah.
to me about that?
So normally I don't answer numbers that I don't recognize, and I think a lot of people are the same way. But I did recognize it as a number coming from the ballpark,
Yeah.
so I answer it. He goes, "Hi, can I speak to Barry, please?" I said, "Yeah, this is Barry. Can I ask who's calling?" He goes, "It's Jake Berger," and I'm like, "No, really, who is this?" He goes, "No, really, it's Jake Berger." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "No, I'm serious. It's Jake Berger." So we didn't talk long. It was just something. Basically, they had him calling the fans to say, "Hey, thanks for renewing your season tickets for this year and whatnot." So we talked for maybe 2 minutes. I said, "Hey, Jake, before you go," I said, "I got to tell you something." He said, "What's that?" So you and I actually have a mutual friend. He goes, "Do we?" He goes, "Who is it?" And I told him it was you. He goes, "How do you know him?" And I just told him, like how we met at the ballpark and everything. And then the one year at Sox Fest, I got in line for his autograph and reminded him again. And I said, "He's probably going to be calling you to see if you want to grab a beer afterwards." He goes, "Okay, tell him to call me." Unfortunately, he never did make it out that night,
Yeah.
but still, he's another real down to earth guy that I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, he got traded to Texas in the offseason, which I
Hmm.
thought, or he got traded to Miami from the Sox, and then got
Right.
traded to Texas this offseason, and then just got sent down to AAA about 2 weeks ago, and he's going to bounce back. He's
Oh yeah.
and his story's incredible. He almost retired.
Right, due to injury because he kept injuring that same leg over and over again.
Yeah, and it was just but I'm he's down to earth. We all still stay in touch.
Hmm.
So seeing him come with the White Sox and being a fan growing up and playing for your team, I'm sure it was hard for him to get traded, but it also I thought Miami was a good situation. I think Texas is a great situation. I don't want to speak for him, but I it's the nature of the business, but he's
Of
definitely
course.
one of the good guys, So
Yeah,
Barry,
and
I'll
the story behind his number with Texas, don't you? His jersey
yes, I
number.
do. Yeah.
That
It's
that alone,
yeah,
for those who don't know, his daughter was born with Down syndrome, and the name of the exact condition that she has the number 21 in it, and
yeah.
so he wears that in honor of his daughter to raise awareness for Down syndrome.
Yeah, he's just down to earth dude. He was supposed to be we had a reunion in January back in Springfield with all the 2015 guys, and he was supposed to be there. He ended up not making it, but we were definitely, we all still stay in touch. And we knew as a freshman. So my last year, he was a freshman, and we knew he was going to be special, and at that point I didn't know like first round special, but
Mhm.
I knew he was going to have a chance to go play pro ball, and pro ball he has, so
Yeah, and
definitely.
he's got some power in his bat. I think the only reason they sent him down was to work on his swing a little bit.
I
So he's
think
not
so.
going to be there very long.
No, he definitely won't. No, he'll be back up and I'd say if he's not back up already, I haven't checked. He'll be back up in a couple weeks. So
Well, the Rangers are actually coming here within the next like couple weeks or so, and I'm fully expecting him to be back by then.
yeah. Well,
Because
and what's ironic too is the Rangers hitting coach in AAA was actually my roommate at Missouri
oh,
State. So
cool.
he was the hitting coach for Missouri State when Jake was there, and then Missouri State ended up letting him go. So he came up. Matt Lawson's his name. He came
Okay,
up with the Rangers. He was actually involved when Cliff Lee got traded to Seattle. They had a minor league player go in the deal. Matt was that minor league player that went. And
got
so
it.
he came up in the Rangers organization. So he stayed in touch. And so when Missouri State let him go, he ended up getting back with the Rangers organization and AAA. And so now Jake's back working with his old hitting coach from college, which is kind of
Hey,
ironic.
that's probably why sending him down might have been the perfect situation for him, because he's
Yeah.
familiar with the hitting coach. And again, it was just to kind of work on his swing a little bit. It's not that
Yeah.
he wasn't performing well enough or whatever. It's just there's a couple things he needed to work on, but they didn't expect it to take very long. In fact, nobody does.
Yeah, for sure. Barry, I want to ask you this. So there's been a
Yeah.
lot of talk lately of White Sox getting a new stadium. Now it was
hmm
announced, the Bears are going to move to Arlington High. I've heard that 55 times on and off the
Well,
last few.
that's actually starting to make the news again. That
Yeah,
they're going
yeah,
to
I just
focus
saw
on
that.
moving there.
Yeah, so which good for them, But what are your thoughts? Obviously, the time at Comiskey, in my opinion, is going to be sooner rather than later.
hmm
What are your Do you expect them to come to a deal in Chicago? Do you think they may just renovate the stadium? What are your opinions?
I don't think they need a new ballpark. That ballpark is 35 years old, which some might call it old by their standards. I think the Kingdome in Seattle was only 30 years old when they tore that down.
Yeah,
But we don't need a new ballpark. There's nothing wrong with this one. Every year they're doing some kind of renovations, just changing things up a little bit. Every year on opening day, you go into the ballpark, something's different.
yeah,
But I honestly do not think they need a new ballpark. I think Jerry's pushing for it because their lease here is going to expire in about 5 years. And now is the time for them to start thinking about what they want to do when it expires. So Jerry's threatening to move the team to the South Loop, or there's been talk of Nashville, but I don't see that happening. I think people just read way too much into that.
yeah,
But he's saying, he wants a real sweet deal from the state. Like this one now was all taxpayer funded. Nothing came out of his pocket for this ballpark. Um, so he's looking for a deal similar to that. And the governor already said absolutely not because it doesn't benefit the taxpayers in any way.
right. Yeah, well, and I remember I was just kind of giving you shit one day, and I said I'm going to buy you a Florida White Sox shirt. And from your perspective, I remember you telling me, didn't you like start a petition in your neighborhood to keep the White Sox in Chicago? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, actually, a few of us did. We went around just knocking on people's doors and like, "Why are you bothering me?" And but they made a last minute deal for a new ballpark to keep them here. And
yeah,
I guess it's a nice ballpark. There's
it is.
nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with it. No reason to tear it down. They don't need a new one. I think a lot of teams just get caught up in this. Okay, our ballpark's 25 years old. Time to get a new one. No, we don't need a new one. There's
Yeah,
again, can't say it
I
enough. Nothing wrong with it.
I agree. I think the food, honestly, is one of the best in baseball of all the ballpark. You've been to all of them. I've been
I
to
have, yes.
60, 70% of them. And I feel like the White Sox are right up there with the food. It's not a Wrigley where you've got a lot of bars around. The thing about Comiskey I like is the parking because you can
hmm
go and tailgate. That's where I made a lot of my money was going from car to car with the
hmm
car raffle tickets,
Hey,
and
whatever it takes, right?
yeah, people would offer me food, all that. It was while I was selling them a car raffle ticket. Like it was so, there's that atmosphere. I personally, I think if they if they can get some more bars around there, I think it would really be. But I don't know. You've got that city park over there. You've got, you're kind of landlocked around it outside of the parking lot. But I don't know. You tell me you live there. Like
Well,
it's
there are a few bars in the neighborhood, not as many as up north, but we got Wings and Rings, Cork and Carry, Turtles, Ballpark Pub, Mitchell's. There's a lot of bars in the area, just not as close to the ballpark as
yeah,
up on the north side.
yeah,
Um, in fact, today there's going to be a watch party at Cork and Carry for the game.
nice,
So the
nice.
108 guys, you know about the 108 guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're hosting a watch party, and they do their live podcast, so they're going to be doing a show there while we're all watching the game and having some drinks.
Absolutely. Okay, last question here,
Yep.
Barry. So we talked about Wings and Rings. I
hmm
know, I never heard of it. So you're like, hey, one day after the game, you're like, come have a beer with us at Wings and Rings. After I was like, what? I was like, where's that? And I started coming in there, and it became like family to me when I lived in Chicago. And you went to, I think it was Cincinnati, a few years
Yeah.
ago, and tour headquarters, all that. And like, don't you go to like anytime you're in a city with a Wings and Rings, don't you go there? Or?
If there is one, I will definitely go. In fact, and anytime I do one of my travels, I always look to see if there's a Wings and Rings there. The last time I was in Cincinnati, their corporate office caught wind of it, and I
Mhm.
actually went to 4 different Wings and Rings in 4 different states in the same day. I started off at the one right here by my house, stayed for like 45 minutes, left there, went to Midway, flew to Cincinnati. When I landed in Cincinnati, I took an Uber from the airport to Greendale, Indiana, stayed for an hour or so. I went to Crestview Hills, Kentucky after that. And that's where one of the guys from the corporate office actually met up with me. And he gave
Oh,
me $100 Wings gift card, $100 Uber gift card, and he paid my bar tab. So
wow.
after that, I hopped in an Uber, went back to Cincinnati, and finished off my day there. Um,
Oh,
and then they invited me to tour the corporate office. Took me out for lunch at one of their new prototype stores, the ones that were hoping to remodel all the other ones after. Bought me lunch there, drove me to the ballpark, for the game, and that's why I keep going back. They do things like that for me. So
well, I
that's
remember.
why it's always going to be my favorite place.
For sure. And I remember one time we went there for your birthday. It was the off season, and they brought out a big cake. Like you were there, and I stopped by your parents. I got to meet your parents. They
hmm
stopped by, and all of a sudden, here comes this big cake. And you looked at me and you said, "This is why I like that place." They knew it was my
Oh
birthday. I
yeah.
didn't go advertising it was my birthday, but they always took care of us. And Miles, we got to give a shout out to our guy Miles.
Oh, for sure, man. In fact, he's working
He
today.
Oh, he is working today. Well, tell
Yeah,
Miles I said hello. You
absolutely.
remember you remember when people would be shouting in there and Miles would come by? Of course, you know, we may have had our fair share of beverages, and I'd start
Of
chanting
course.
Miles, Miles, and it would drive him nuts. But I'm sure he
That guy,
missed
he needs his own Facebook, like Instagram, whatever. They got to call it like the dancing bartender.
exactly. He always took
And
care of us. Stacy. I know she
hmm
doesn't work there anymore, but she always
no,
took
she
care.
doesn't.
And there was one, and I can't remember her name now. Um, but
You're probably
she
thinking of Dana.
Dana, was she the one that was from Springfield, Missouri? Because I remember
No,
one time I started talking to
that I'm not sure who that was.
this bartender. We were just talking, and she goes, I said, "Are you from Chicago?" And she goes, "No, I'm actually from Missouri." I said, "What part?" And she goes, "Springfield." I said, "Well, I'm from Willard, just outside." And she went to Glendale, which, and
Yeah.
she graduated like a year. And I was like, wow, of all bars in Chicago, this
hmm
person grew up 20 minutes from me, and it's just like small world,
Yeah, right.
So,
There's actually a set of rules at the bar where
yeah.
every time Miles says the word girl, you have to take a drink. Every time he calls me a bitch, you have to take a drink.
Oh,
No,
God.
all these things. And he accuses me of making those rules up. I mean, I did. It doesn't mean he has to accuse me, though.
Well, maybe you did.
I did, but it doesn't mean he has to accuse me.
Yeah, good times there. I mean, hell, we'd go down there during the off season, and I'd have no reason to go down by the ballpark. But it's just
hmm
it's the people. Obviously, I had my place Murphy's on the north side, but it was just
Right.
sitting there and got to know a lot of people. And every time I'm back in Chicago, it's one of the first stops I go to is Wings and Rings. So, Barry, I'm so glad we got to do this. So glad we
Man,
got to
this was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I felt like we got to just reminisce. Hopefully, our listeners enjoy, and they can catch you section 530. He'll be happy to say hello. Find the guy with the firefighter helmet that he's wearing.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, Barry, appreciate you. Appreciate what you do for the city of Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Just always enjoy. Glad you got to meet my brother a few years ago.
Yes, I did. Yeah, he
Yeah,
came and we sat and took in a game together.
yeah, that's you're like family to us. My dad
Man, I
always asks
appreciate
about
that.
you. So yeah, appreciate it, Barry. And I'll see you. You're coming to New York at some point this year, correct?
New Jersey. I'll be in New Jersey for Christmas.
For Christmas. Okay, got it. Well, I'll see you at some point. Hopefully, I can get back to Chicago in a couple months, and maybe we can.
Let me know when, man.
Yeah, for sure. Folks, this has been awesome reminiscing with White Sox superfan Barry Bagodonuts. You can catch him section 530 or catch him at Wings and Rings over on 34th and Halstead. And Barry, thanks again. Tell the family, tell everybody 530 hello.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry Bagodonuts.
Take care, man.